Once again, I'd like to thank the Arts Midwest for allowing us to do this series. They granted us some funds to pay the artists to actually be here. That's a new thing in the Black Hills. We're paying the authors, also able to give some money to the Cave for their expertise in technology and also to rent this space. Good. Well, I read Walking Wounded. I really enjoyed it. I was kind of hesitant because I thought, okay, it's a war novel, but it certainly wasn't. It wasn't anything like that. It was certainly about recovery and healing and a lot of surprises in between. And I'd like to have you do some reading. When we started this group, we found that writers aren't necessarily readers. And so we're going to have to work on that too, maybe inviting some actors or some people in to read.
This young lady's going to help us.
Dorothy Rosby is here tonight. She has a public speaking for shy writers workshop she's going to be doing in the near future. So we're looking forward to that, helping some of our writers be able to read their work.
Get one of my cards before you leave. Let me know.
So Steve, would you like to kick us off on some of your work on Walking Wounded?
Sure. All right. Long story short, chapter 1, you meet these two guys, Sherwood O'Neill and Art Johnson. Okay, Sherwood, these glasses are annoying. Sherwood suffers from post-traumatic amnesia. When I wrote this, we hadn't even heard of PTSD yet. And it manifests itself as these seizures that he calls flip-outs, during which he goes through this weird dream sequence about what happened to him, how he got, what the accident was. But the accident itself is just not there. And he considers himself dead, partly from what he's heard the doctors say, and that recurs in these flip outs through the novel, and partly because he has this relationship with this young nephew, who at the time he has a relationship, the kid's 3, and he flips out, and he sees the effect it has on this child, and he just decides that he can't be close to people, people who care about him that much. So he's dead. He says he's a walking dead man. He's written himself off completely. Now Art Johnson lost both legs in Vietnam. He finds Sherwood in the VA hospital in Sunnyvale, and out of just compassion and probably a little motivation of his own, he takes this guy who's kind of being sidelined. He's off the end of a corridor, and he helps him through these flip outs and coaches him so they get these down to where Sherwood's functional. Now Sherwood in return acts as extra legs, extra mobility. He can push the wheelchair, and a buffer against the world, because Art's father is ashamed of him because his kid went off to war and came back without his legs. And I got that from a kind of an odd situation I knew about. But when Trump said that about McCain, I prefer my heroes uncaptured, it was like, wow. This was prophetic. Anyway, so part of Sherwood's job is to keep Art's family from getting him, because they want to take him and stick him away somewhere where he won't embarrass him anymore.
Steve, I'm going to leave the stage while you read your work. Okay?
All right. Okay, so basically what this section shows is you get a little bit of the flip out, so you get a sense of what Sherwood's going through. Then they have been living in a cabin south of Custer, up in the hills. And Sherwood goes to town one day, goes to the post office, gets her disability checks, goes to the music store. Art makes guitars, and they've got a music store that is selling them on commission, simply because they're veterans, and these people are feeling good about him. Well, Sherwood he gets a letter that his sister's dead, and he's the last living relative for his nephew, who's now 4. And he has to go back. I mean, he's got to do something for this kid, but he doesn't want to get too close. He just wants to go make sure he's in a good place. At the same time, the guy in the music store says, "Hey, there's been this detective in here looking for Art Johnson. Is Arthur in trouble?" And it's like, whoops, Art's father found him. So they're on an airplane just about to arrive in San Francisco at the start of this section. It goes like this. We're in the flip out. He's moving toward a truck where Kenny pulls rifles from the racks and hands them to the men who file past. Then, nothing. His time has a hole in it. In place of events, Sherwood finds terror, slippery grass like quicksand, air that burns in his chest. The terror is familiar and not so bad this time. Kenny seems to be near him but leaving. Sherwood wants to follow. Instead, he feels hands that hold and lift, needles in his arms, tubes that dangle beside his face. Bright lights shine in his eyes. Men in smocks and masks pass back and forth, and he asks them to leave him alone. The dream drags on like a snake down hospital corridors that shift and echo and change. Always the same green walls, the same red blood, alcohol and vitamin scents and antiseptic air. Everywhere he asks what has happened to Kenny, and finally a voice answers with the question, "Where did you see him last?" Koza. Was that in Saigon? Another person, a woman, is present. Sherwood can't turn his head to see her. He was brought in from Okinawa, doctor. How the hell did he get a heart full of shrapnel on Okinawa? An accident. The one he keeps talking about, Kenny, was killed. Killed, Sherwood repeats. The word doesn't seem to have meaning. He's scheduled for surgery in the morning. Coughing, the doctor flips through a page on a clipboard. I see. The nurse comes near the bed. Are you awake? Do you know what happened to you? He opens his mouth to tell her. Nothing comes. He can't move, and pains shoot from his shoulders through his groin. When he tries, but he has no images. Heart full of shrapnel. He has no recollection of it. None at all. I was killed, he says. Leaning near his face, the nurse shakes his shoulder. Are you all right, mister? The pain is unbearable. A babble of voices around him, and Art says, leave him alone. He's having a blackout. 5:24 and 8 seconds, Woody. 9 seconds, 10 seconds. How much time? 3 minutes. I'm coming out, Sherwood says. 3 minutes. He can feel the faint vibration of the airplane through his seat back, and that helps him place himself before he opens his eyes. Are they going to get worse, he wonders? Pulse got up to 130. No, it's longer this time, but not a hard one. Sherwood feels Art lower his list to the armrest. A worried-looking stewardess kneels in the aisle. Faces pokes over the seats ahead. I'm okay. He stretches his arms and laughs at himself for hoping the gesture might make it appear he's simply waking up. If I can sit a minute and just get my bearings, he tells her. Would you like to come back where you can be alone? No, he says. I can have the pilot radio ahead for the doctor to be waiting. Art can take care of me. You sure? Her eyes fix on Art's tucked, empty pant legs. He's sure, Art says. We'll need the wheelchair when we land, that's all. She hesitates a moment more, then rises and moves down the aisle. One by one, the curious faces withdraw. I'm having my doubts about this, Sherwood whispers, if it makes you feel any better. It doesn't, Woody, you know it doesn't, but if they get worse, we can handle it. Just promise me you won't let my family get me. Right. San Francisco Airport is too close. If they get to me, you'll come get me out, right? I'll do it, Art. You know I'll do it. Art nods, but he doesn't look sure. Finally, he turns away, stares through the window, withdrawn, until his eyes almost look blank. Sitting rigid in his seat for fear any movement might drop his resistance and let the dream come flooding back, Sherwood watches Art out of the corner of his eye. You're not in such good shape yourself, old friend. Haven't seen you like this since before we left the hospital for good. Announcement of the arrival brings them both alert. San Francisco time is 4:30. The temperature is 52 degrees and it's raining. I'm going to miss the snow, Sherwood says. Art doesn't answer. The stewardess brings the wheelchair as soon as the plane is stopped, and she keeps the way clear so they are among the first off. Sherwood's paper sack and both their military overcoats are piled on Art's lap as he hurries to pace with strong thrusts of his hands. Come on, Woody, rent us a car and get us out of here. I feel eyes, and I have a bad feeling about this. It's like an ambush. Bus or taxi, Sherwood says, as car agencies only rent to licensed drivers. I forgot. Art twists around. How's it look behind us? Relax, we're surrounded by people. What can happen? If that guy figures out we split, if he figured out about the plane, one phone call is all it would take. I'm moving as fast as I can, Sherwood says. Watch out. Damn, the guy with the coffee. I see him. The man is in his 50s, tall and dressed in a gray wool suit with a dark tie. He leaves a styrofoam cup on the counter of a closed concession stall with a careless gesture that suggests familiarity with styrofoam cups in airports. A pretty woman in nurse's white responds to an impatient wave of the hand that has just discarded the cup and follows him into the concourse. Automatically, Sherwood angles a chair to pass around the man and the nurse, but Art breaks with his hands, brings him to a stop. What's the matter? It's no use, Woody. The man steps up to Sherwood, hand extended. You would be Sherwood O'Neill, he says. His shake is firm. I'm Arthur Johnson Sr. If you want to bring the chair, I have a car waiting. Sherwood tightens his grip, ready to run, but Art has locked the wheels. He sits forward, braced on his arms, his mouth an awkward gap in his face. The nurses come up behind Arthur Sr. She's small, a little taller than 5 feet, with a tiny waist and skinny legs. Dark, short hair surrounds her face like a fringe and seems to tumble down her neck in small, loose curls. Her eyes are brown and damp, and they're locked onto Art's face. Karen, he says. Her feet scuff the dirty floor. When I answered the ad, I didn't know it would be you. I wrote, but you didn't answer. He got you? You? She shakes her head, but can't continue to meet his eyes. Thank you for bringing my son home, Sherwood. Come along. Arthur Sr. claps a hand on his shoulder and watches Worry now, ready for a chase. Mrs. Johnson would like to meet you, to thank you in person. Remember your promise, Woody. I won't forget. Either bringing her back off, young man. I'm losing patience, and you're blocking the way here. Please come, Art, the nurse says. I'll help you. I really can. You, of all people. Face flushed as if she might cry, she looks at him. Again, how else could I even have found you? Take the chair, Arthur Sr. orders her. Enough fooling around. He turns on Sherwood. What's the matter with you? Do you want money? Is that it? Do I have to bribe you to have my own son? His hand comes out of his pocket to point at Sherwood with a tight roll of bills. No. Spreading his arms. In a gesture of surrender, Sherwood backs away from the money. You'll write, Art? I'll have to. You don't need money, huh? A corner of Arthur Sr.'s mouth lifts in a hint of contempt. He waits until he's sure that nurse has replaced Sherwood behind the chair. Then, without a word having passed between him and his son, he does a smooth-about face and strides down the concourse. The nurse follows, guiding the chair with professional ease. Should do something, O'Neill, but what? Alone, Sherwood can't act. He can hardly make sense of the fact that he's more than 1,000 miles from the bed he woke in this morning, out of circulation for too long, off in other countries, in hospitals or tiny apartments within walking distance of the psychiatric clinic, in the isolated cabin. His own country feels foreign to him. The thought that he might have come back to do something for Jamie seems crazy. He couldn't do anything for Art. He hasn't even managed to keep his few possessions. The overcoat and the bag of shaving gear are now gone out of sight with Art in his chair. Slowly, the movement of the deplaning passengers sweeps him into the main lobby, there to be jostled out of lines for several shuttles into the city until he gives up and pays a cab to take him to the Greyhound depot. People in the rain, loitering on the dirty sidewalk in front of the bus terminal, make Sherwood uneasy. Inside is worse than out. Scrub tile floors, molded plastic chairs with TV sets bolted to their reinforced arms. Thick odors of whiskey, wet wool, warm skin. Alone now, he has to look at this place and these people in a way he doesn't quite understand, and he feels threatened. He can't reconcile all this with the postal clerk or Mr. Jorgensen with memories of bargaining in Okinawan open-air markets, tiny people with lively eyes full of good humor, and the ubiquitous courtesy of the Oriental bow. Here in the depot, everyone who crowds around him stares with dull, indifferent eyes that bulge or sink into pasty-looking skin. They don't respond to one another. Tired mothers try to shush boisterous children who disobey until they're caught and held immobile to scream themselves into mimicry of the pervasive stupor. My God, his voice is absorbed by background noise. A gust of foul-smelling air hits his damp clothing and he shivers. Ceiling speakers blare unintelligible instructions. And Sherwood approaches an open ticket office. A pock-faced man stares at him. "Ticket to Dauville," Sherwood says finally. He gropes in his pocket and comes out with a $100 bill. It's too big and he knows it. He tries again and again until he finds a 20 that he pushes across the counter. The man takes the bill, makes change, and slides it back with the ticket on top of the money. "Gate 6, he says. Cramming paper and coins into his shirt pocket, Sherwood follows a sluggish flow of bodies through wide doors and into a long shed broken into sections by banks of coin-operated lockers. Cigarette butts and pieces of broken glass litter the asphalt. A section of newspaper stuck to the floor in a puddle of soda pop catches his eye with the headline, "Ford tells Congress the State of the Union is not good." Feel better when you get out of this city, O'Neill, he tells himself, but the Bay Bridge, then countless strung together suburbs pass relentlessly. Sherwood had hoped for vague humps of distant mountains and the occasional twinkle from an isolated farmhouse. Instead, he is assaulted by light, which is one of his triggers, by the way. Approaching headlights and a slow-shifting pattern of taillights, lighted houses, sheds, factories, chain restaurants, shopping centers along the freeway, lights of vehicles on roads to right and left, porch lights, street lights, neon and mercury vapor in Fairfield, Travis Air Force Base, Vacaville, navigation lights and landing lights that spin and flash and whirl through the sky overhead, and beyond it all, halo after halo of reflected light from distant cities that glow against the night clouds in a haze of rain. Another flip out, O'Neill. You couldn't handle one without art. He ignores the question, but can't do it any more than he can keep his... He tries to ignore the question, but can't do it any more than he can keep his eyes closed. When the driver announces Dauville, Sherwood stumbles off the bus with hardly an idea of where he is. That's it. Thank you.
And you did all that without a drink of water.
That's coffee. I have to stay awake to drive home.
Well, we have exceptional talent in the Black Hills in many of the disciplines of the arts. But in this particular writer's block, we're going to explore the writers of the Black Hills. And I'd like to thank Steve Thorpe once again for being with us to talk a little bit about his process. Up next is Anna Davidson Martinez. She's a poet and she's pissed. So we'll have Anna up next. And she'll be here by film. We went out and did an interview with her last Monday and she read some of her poetry for us. So that'll be up in just a few minutes.
And I did bring some books that I'm selling. $10 for the paperback, $20 for the hardback.
Over there.
Let's get out of the way and let Anna go.